Here's the thing. I'm going to go ahead first and dedicate this to Mr. Burns, one of my subs that is of Dominican heritage but was born in Puerto Rico. And I'll let him tell the story as to how him and his family ended up in the United States. And they had no awareness that in the United States of blackness and having to be labeled as black until his family got here. But this is a dedication to him. Here's the thing, the comedian Godfrey, right? I'm going to give him a shout out on this video. Was born and raised in the United States to Nigerian parents. But he'll be the first one to tell you to stop talking crap about Black Americans or us foundational Black Americans, okay? Because you can be Black American and not necessarily a foundational Black American. So we're past that, right? I've had these conversations throughout my life with people from Latin America, and Mr. Burns is the second person that I've met from of Dominican heritage who does not hide his the idea that he is labeled black. He has no issue with it. So in this article, right, this affirms what he's told me all along. So now there's a website that is helping people in Latin America discover if they have African ancestry based upon the Spanish colonies here in the New World. When you read into this article, a lot of the Latino people in this article grew up suspecting that they had African ancestry. But it was the taboo, the dirty thing you didn't talk about in your household. Imagine knowing that your bloodline carries something that, by definition of it, your family sees as a stigma. One story is of a professional woman who's since married, who knew that based on the texture of her hair that she couldn't have just been white. And when she did the DNA test, discovered that she was 40% sub-Saharan Africa, consisting of several nations. Lots of them that were listed are the nations that were put on slave ships and brought to the New World. She embraced this because even in her youth, she knew that this is what she was. She said, just the hair texture told me. But even after showing the results to her family, people like her mother and older relatives, they would not accept being black. And remember, Godfrey covered this. I know black. And to be honest, I don't mean to disrespect Latinos, but when you come to the United States, how you look will determine your racial stratification. I don't make the rules. They just are what they are. You will be targeted based on looks. That's just how things work here. Well, this lady, to make a long story short, said while that generation doesn't embrace it, her 3 children will grow up with a knowledge of their black ancestry. 40% is a lot. Any genealogist can correct me. That means either one of her grandparents or a great-grandparent was black for it to be 40% when they tested her. But I just thought it was absolutely beautiful that she accepted that, because she'd always suspected it anyway. There's a second young lady here who was the product of Puerto Rican parents that I think raised her in the United States. She was not allowed to discuss black issues. She was not allowed to date black people or bring a black person home to her parents. It didn't matter if they were someone she was dating or a friend. But she can recall while her dad talked crap about black people in public at night in private, he had a secret stash of hair care products, specially designed for black people to tame his hair. That's the most disturbing of it all. There's a third one, a comedian here who always suspected he had African ancestry, and he was excited and explored it. Here's why this story bothered me. For the record, if you're of Latin heritage and you want to more so claim to be white, do you by all means. I'm not here to tell you how you should identify. You have to live in your own skin at the end of the day. Sorry, Mr. Burns, that's just how I feel about that. It's not my community, so I can't tell people how to live, okay? Live in that skin. Do you to live like that? Why do you feel the need to guilt trip your bloodline, even post-slavery, some of you, to deny their African ancestry even when they desire to know? If you don't desire to know, do you and live you? Why do you have to do that? And it makes sense, the whitening of the bloodline. Because post-slavery, I think Brazil flew in 4 million white people to whiten the bloodline there in Brazil, which has repercussions today. And we must remember the year 1888, the last year that slavery was fully acceptable in the new, what we call the New World, quotation marks. Brazil was the last country to abolish slavery. And my suspicion, that being a Portuguese speaking country, is that they probably recognized that we had a civil war, and civil war to a degree discussed slavery in the United States, and they don't want that kind of war to break out over race. So they were the first country in Latin America and the last country in Latin America to enslave people of African heritage. Hiding some of who you are is harmful. But my thing is, in my personal opinion, for Black Americans, I can understand why it's bothersome that some Latino people, even when they have black features, will do this. I know black. And Godfrey made fun of you because he, growing up in the United States as a person of Nigerian immigrant, understand that you cannot escape the racial stratification here. No matter how much you choose to try. Yes, in an ideal world, people shouldn't tell you how you should and should not be able to identify. But when you have features and markers and you avoid that, you sometimes set yourself up for the scrutiny that is coming. Again, you want to identify as white, do you. I'm not here to tell you how to be. Okay? But Godfrey's making fun of you is a symptom of a larger conversation that needs to be had. That is, you have that ancestry in your blood, whether you like it or not. Here's my personal feeling about it. There's parallels between the whitening of your blood, Latinos, and Black Americans who were what we call light, bright, and damn near white. There's a book even titled that, Light, Bright, and Damn Near White, that I read. And I need to buy it because that book is just beautiful. Now, the people in this book who were black acknowledged their black ancestry and were lighter skinned blacks that could pass for white but chose to live black. But there were significant amounts and numbers of black people who abandoned being black and whitened their bloodlines and ran away from their ancestry. That's a discussion that we have to have. But what does this have to do with Latinos? Sometimes we're critical of your community when we all know. I can't think of a person in my family that passed, but lots of black foundational black Americans or ADOS people have those stories. In order for us to stop being critical of Latin America, we must be open with the fact that this happened in our communities as well. White equaled wealth, it equaled access, it equaled opportunity, and to a degree it still does. Pardon that phone, I thought I'd turned it off. So, although this isn't my culture, I'm going to be a little more careful in the future due to the parallels between our two cultures and whiteness to not be so critical. But for Latin people who would like to discuss their African heritage, I think that they should be able to do so in this time period openly and freely without being alienated from their larger community. Again, it's not my community. But what I'm saying is you are a rich tapestry and mixture of different things. And in order to find your happiness, it's time to embrace all of it. And also have discussions and deal with it, no matter how beautiful or how insidious it was.